She put a pot on she hair and gone. Them a the first one out on the dam. Basket on she head, bucket in each hand. Hold up on she frock, I wanna she grandson. To the market, them a go. For the morning, the day is dawning. For cockcrow to give the villagers a warning. Rise and shine, the birds them a sing. All animal take turn as them join in the waking. Cockcrow, dagabag, donkey, bray, horse, and they even duck a quack. Cockcrow, dagabag, donkey, bray, horse, and they even duck a quack. Come and hear this sweet story that tell the people about life in the country. All day a back down, me now a come home. The naga jackass yard for fetch the load. Cockle shy hand, bag over shoulder, running by his side, a Rexy and Rover. From the farm, them a come. Sun a go down but up the river. Some washing clothes, some folks are bathing at the water. Fisherman, they catch them a bring. From a canoe boat, man, them start offloading. Aymara, Kwakwari, Hail Bakakuma.
This program is intended specifically for Beefy Triumph, but it has implications to all other communities that our foreparents bought. Because, for instance, today, I intend that we discuss ancestral lands in some ways, but more specific, how we can utilize those ancestral lands to seek community development within our communities. Because most of our villages, what we see is a decline. If we look at what was 100 years ago and what is in terms of communal activities, the self-reliance of our community, we do not have it. We are dependent. We are a community of dependence. And personally, I do not think that bodes well for us into the future. Some of our village leaders, or those who have been appointed to leadership in our village, councillors and so on, will tell us there is nothing like ancestral lands. To me, that is being myopic. They are not thinking of the future generations. Because if we can establish that we have ancestral lands, those are lands that ought to be protected by law. Those are lands that we should not be able to lose. Those lands should have the same regime as we see the lands of the Amerindians in Guyana have. Because, as I said, those lands were lands that our foreparents bought immediately after emancipation. Those are lands that were bought by monies that people who were not working, who were working for free, were able to save under those conditions, right? People who were considered property, they eventually saw the need to acquire property. So we need to have those lands protected. I know Brother Ama has been working in the realm of land development and community development. Hence, I've invited him to be here. Brother Henry has been working in the realm of our folklore. So he will have a lot to contribute in terms of the thinking of our people in times gone back. And you, the listeners, I hope that whatever these two brothers can share with us tonight will be of value. So my first question will be to Brother Amer. Brother Amer, the lands that our foreparents bought, how do you see it vis-a-vis other lands in Guyana?
Thank you, Brother Elton. Good night to our listeners. To answer the question, in your opening statement, you correctly said that these villages were bought by our once enslaved foreparents as a result of money they saved as a result of overtime work. Hence, these villages are private property and should be, as you rightly said, be regarded as the Amerindian lands are. But unfortunately, that is not so. Because we, the descendants, are being deprived of our ancestral inheritance of these lands. Concerning agricultural production, they experienced lots of difficulties in that they were not permitted to have successful crop production by being flooded out by the powers that be. However, they persisted. And during my day, I know Buxton, where I'm from, was a very progressive farming area. All the agricultural produce came from the farmlands at the back. Unfortunately, in 1985, the Drainage Irrigation Department did some rehab work as a result of FPO IDB grant to rehabilitate Buxton, one of the projects that he had identified. And what DNI did, they made a cultivation area pond. Instead of digging the trenches in an elevation from the conservancy to the drainage pump, they dug from the beginning of the cultivation area, when going southward, thus creating a pond. So unless the water was extremely high, it could not pass through the residential area to get to the pump into the Atlantic Ocean. And that was the beginning of the destruction of our of agricultural production in Buxton. The other thing is that these lands are there, and the youths who are trying to cultivate are doing so against lots of odds. So, to answer your question simply, these original villages were purchased, hence they are private property and should remain private property, but the powers that be do not want us to live comfortably on what our ancestors would have purchased and provided for us.
You know, brother, I agree that they are private properties, but I would have thought because of the conditions that our foreparents just came out of when they bought those villages. Because remember, if you look at property ownership prior to that, most of it were lease land. Effectively, we were the only people who bought lands at that time. Very few people bought lands from the state. Though they got these lands from the state by way of a lease. We remember they came from where they came and they just took land. Right? We bought those lands. I mean, we got to really put them in a special category. Brother, do you have any comments on that? I mean, it's not your special area, but
Yes, Elton. Good evening, everyone. A very interesting topic you have here, Elton. And you mentioned it's not my special area, but I think it is. um,
I mean,
what?
you're a son of whatever. We define ourselves as the sons and daughters of formerly enslaved. So it's all our issue. It's an issue for all of us.
Okay. A couple of points I'd like to make. I hope you guys are hearing me clearly.
Yes, we are.
Okay. First of all, we must remember that after slavery was abolished in 1838,
34.
well, 34 and 38 was the, anyway, okay, let's say between 1834 and 1838. These villagers, most African owners, villagers, got together. And what we miss at times is that in those days, there were no banks, right?
Yes.
But the slaves, so-called enslaved people, they accumulated their money, buried it under the tamarind tree or whatever tree in a chest, right? And people would walk over it daily, and nobody would attempt to steal it because they knew it was for a purpose. And let us bear in mind also that most of them were illiterate. Those that were, so not all of them could read and write. I don't know if you're aware of that. Now, I have the deed for the transport for Bedford Acting with all the names of the people that contributed the monies towards the purchase of BV. And I'm sure Mr. Hamer also is aware of the one for Buxton and throughout the coast and even in Essequibo all over. And these slaves should be commended for what they did to acquire these lands. And it should not, we should not stand by and allow them to be taken away from us. Our ancestors did what they had to do. And I think the same it applies in Buxton, where you purchased a property in the front area, close to the seawall, whatever, had also a corresponding property in the backlands. Right. So you had one in front and one in at the back. I don't know if Mr. Hamer is the same thing in Buxton, but I know definitely for BV. And those backlands are the backlands that were used for farming in those days, because remember, they weren't blue collar workers and all those things during the slavery times. And they used farming for sustenance and to feed the supply for nutrition and food for the families. And there was a sharing system, and I could even venture to say even a barter system existed in those days. You have a lot of mangoes, I exchange my coconut for mangoes and that sort of thing. And they existed because money was not, we didn't have legal tender at that time. Anyway, after the flood in the backlands, and we had some destruction also for lands in the BV, when we had the flooding and irrigation problems as the same thing we had in the Bedford area. And what I noticed the last time I was there, which was last year, I went down at the back there, a lot of people are building houses on areas of land that that people are paying taxes for, and they cannot be identified because I think it was when was the big flood? 2015, I think it was.
2005. 2005.
2005, right. all those lands were leveled off, so the beds became like a flat area. So identification for identification purposes for some people is null and void. So what we need to do right now is to reconstruct the area and have like markers put down for people, because people are, I mean, it's not a lot of money that we are paying for the backlands because the taxes and there's not like in America here, we have a taxation levy on an annual basis where the taxes will go up, but you get the service for it. But in Guyana, it's little or nothing. The people pay off their whole taxes for the year, sometimes 2 years, 3 years. But then to find out when they go to identify where the land actually is, there's a problem because it cannot be found, it cannot be identified because of the flood and the flattening. Some people are back there doing some work, but not a lot. And then with the thick underbrush with the natural vegetation, a lot of weed and grass is growing up all over the place. So it's hard to find. I'm entitled to 1, 2, 3, 5 of them at the back there, but I don't know where they are. I remember as a little boy going down with Gonzalez Polo and going right down to the conservancy there, but everything has changed up. So what needs to be done is for identification. I'm sure the village council has a map with all the allocations that they collect the fees for and fees and the taxes
Yes,
every year.
there are maps for the neighborhood for those lands in the back there. However, as you said, identification, because you can only identify based on markers,
Right.
right? Or you have to go and take measurements back from some point
So,
that is static, that has not moved over the years, and you come back, right? So we can, but it's not an easy job. But the whole thing is the we need to look at how we can have those lands reintegrated into the economy of the village. Because should we have those lands farmed, then we can create employment for many of the young men who are doing precious nothing when the day come in the village. And not only young men, young women too, because they can be involved in other activities like not the hardcore farming. Some of them may do that, but then we can do things like preserving these fruits, food processing. That's the term I've been looking for. They can become involved in food processing. They can become involved in marketing these products and so on. So those are the areas we need to be looking at. But how
Right.
do we get these lands
Well, what we have
productive?
to do, we have to get a surveyor, right, to get in there with the maps and the allocation. We have to know. We don't want to encroach on other people's land. We have to identify the lands and make sure that they're there because their people are paying for for rates and taxes. Well, some people are, right? But we must know where they are because we can't allow people to come in because we had the issue recently with was it DM Fernandez and
Yes, John
Mohammed,
Fernand.
John Fernandez and Mohammed and all that, and it I think we
Well,
managed to get them off of there where they were
well,
transferred.
it was more a question that our district council personnel on the NDC who were not knowledgeable of the village's history, wanting to sell those lands because they were advised by a government minister that those lands are government state lands and it can be sold.
Okay.
Right.
Well, for us to correct that, we have to have the demarcations and we have to allocate them and have everything revitalized. Now, there's a cost. I know I'm familiar with this gentleman who's a surveyor. I'm sure I should be back down there in a couple of months. I'll meet with you. You should be back then as well. And we'll have to have this done because it is very, very important for us to identify, first of all, where these lands are, who they belong to, and collect whatever taxes are outstanding, send out notices, etc., etc. because going forward, we could be a force to be reckoned with. Because I have an idea, for instance, I could briefly tell you what it's all about. Now, there are these dwarf coconut trees, right, that could be bought from Barbie's outlet. And I have a plan to purchase 1,000 of them, 1,000 dwarf coconut trees and 1,000 breadfruit trees, and plant them in every yard to the front, where that people that own land that have houses in the front. Now, in the meantime, if we have that plan going on at the back, that could also be done. Now, these dwarf coconut trees, in a matter of 4 years, they start bearing, and you could stand up and pick them rather
Yes,
than
I'm aware of those coconut trees.
right. Now, with breadfruit and and coconut, you have a metem right there.
Yes.
You get
You
some
see,
flowers, some duff, and think you have the metem
the
right
thing
there.
is, with the
Let me fin-
backlands,
let me
it's
finish.
not as easily as just identifying the lands, because many of those lands, the owners are out of the village, out of the country. So
No, but
I
we
personally
would
will
we
want
would
to suggest,
we would have at least we'd have an idea. The names,
yeah,
who
yeah,
right,
that identity of the ownership of the lands, that is a must. We
and,
cannot encroach on people's land without their permissions.
and
But
demarcations. We must
yeah,
have put up demarcations so that people would know that that it belongs to XYZ, and have the maps revised. And if there's a cost for that, I'm willing to get that done, because it's not um, a very difficult task, at least
I
for the
think
uh,
villages should all contribute towards that, not a one-man
no,
issue.
I'm not saying a one man. I'm not saying a one man. I'm saying, when I say contribute, not to the whole thing,
Yeah, yeah,
at least to get it started, so we could have a movement going on. We have to do
yeah.
fundraisers, everything, blah, 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 all down the line. Because if we don't start, you have to start from some. You have to start at some point. It's like in the embryonic stage, and then you move on. But if we don't start, I'm telling you, these guys are gonna come and try again. The DM Fernando, Mohammed, and all the Fernando, whoever they are, they're gonna come and try again from a different angle. But if we identify and we put up markations and stuff like that, demarcations, I'm thinking it's a big start for us. And then the other villages, we form a template, and all the villages could follow, from Anns Grove, Golden Grove, but Pleasant. Everybody would follow if we could make a start, or if Buxton, whoever would make a start, and we have a program to follow, because these our ancestors, as I mentioned earlier, did human service. They strive, they punish, they sweat, their blood, sweat, tears. Although some of them, as I mentioned, were illiterate, and they acquired these lands, and we should not let them go just like that.
If
No.
if I may, it's the second time you use that incorrect statement.
What that?
Our
What is that?
our
Illiterate,
parents were our
illiterate.
foreparents were
What?
not illiterate.
Yes, some
They
of them.
were very no
Some
no
of
no
them.
no 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 no. They
Yeah.
did not. They were not acquainted with the English language that the enslavers were speaking, and that is different. Not acquainted with a language. I'm not acquainted with French or Spanish. That doesn't mean that I'm illiterate. And it's the same issue with them. They were not illiterate. If they were illiterate, they could not have demonstrated the cooperative spirit that they showed in saving their money without banks. And when the opportunity arose, were able to pool their resources together and purchase these lands.
No,
They were
no,
not illiterate. They were
no.
not acquainted with English language.
Or you were you then. Well, I maybe I didn't explain myself. When I said illiterate, I didn't mean it in terms of not knowing, not in that terminology. Or let me correct what I was trying to explain. In terms of being cognizant of the laws at the time, that is what I meant by illiterate. Not that they couldn't read and write. Well, I'm talking about being and despite all of that,
My brother, let me correct you with a personal example of which I'm aware. They freed for parents of ours in Purchase Mocha Arcadia. They couldn't read and write English, and they were being deprived of occupying the lands that they purchased. And through an attorney, they petitioned the Queen in England to demand their rights.
yeah, but
They won the petition. They won their petition.
you're on the
They
same
signed,
page,
they signed by putting an X mark.
right?
And
Okay.
still on, although the Queen gave order that they must be allowed to occupy their lands, the governor and those associated with the estate of Diamond has not up to today permitted them to occupy the lands that they purchased.
But that's the
So
same
this
thing.
is
The
something
same thing I'm saying.
Let me step in. The argument is one that you're both on the same side. They did not know English or
Right.
could not, the command of English did not allow them to write it or read it, but
And even
they
and
were
not just that,
literate.
they were not
As we have learned in
the
Alex
laws
Haley's Roots,
and the
their
laws and the
competency,
laws. When I
right,
said illiterate, I think you misinterpret what I'm trying to say. You were on the same page. Now that you explained it, that's exactly what I'm saying. They weren't
yeah.
cognizant of what is. I mean, in
Well,
and
not
again,
so much the laws, but the mechanism, the machinations
right,
of
right. Those are the laws,
those in control.
and then they have to go to higher authority and they got counsel. Yes, that we are on the same page, sir. Don't. Sorry if the word illiterate
You know,
sparked something in
I
me, but
wanted to take you up on that to myself, but
uh, we are on the same page. Anyway,
yes, but there's some other things. Personally, I am in total agreement with all you have said, save and except that you did not mention one modality that we can occupy these lands. Because as I said, there'll be many absentee owners. There'll be many who are old. There'll be many who are occupied otherwise. That is, they cannot find the time to go into the farm. So my proposition is that we can establish a cooperative society with the owners and other villagers, and that society be the agency involved in farming the land. Because also we have another problem. Some people own one bed, for instance, or portions of bed, 3 portions of bed in different parts of the Baghdad. A quarter share, another quarter share, and a half share. And you know, both of you would know, that those beds are not economic unit in terms of agriculture, especially today. So for a family to say, look, we're gonna farm our quarter share or half share, it does not really make economic sense. But if we bring all those lands together, identifying the owners, the position where their ownership exists on a map, and we can have the entire area in blocks of 10 acres or whatever, and we farm those. This co-op will have to agree how you ascribe a unit of share, if it's a quarter share or whatever. When I say unit of share of the cooperative relative to the land ownership and financial contributions that members of the members of the co-op will be adding to make it a viable unit, right? So then that co-op can then employ villagers, create employment for villagers,
Yeah,
and
I was
be
getting,
managed
I was
by
getting.
people from the community. If necessary, we may have to import a manager from out of the village if we don't have the skill in the village.
Well, are you familiar with the Friendly Society Act?
Pardon?
The Friendly Society Act,
Yes,
right? Where the cooperatives could be on all for the friendly where you could, they,
your volume.
you know, hearing me?
Yes, hearing you now.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, I was saying, the cooperative idea that you suggested, fine. And then they have the Friendly Society Act where we could have that affiliation going on with identifying the lands and placing them under that as well, and developing it and having something structured to go along to get the land developed. The difficulty that I see, and as which you alluded to, was the fact that most people are out of the country, and the descendants are not even aware of it. Some of them are paying the taxes, some are not, are paying their whatever. So that would be, but the first and foremost, I think we should start getting it identified and having.
Yes. Well, at the village council and the people who are paying their rates and taxes know that they own land, and it is on the documentation. It will be identified section A, lot 15, or
Mhm.
each half of lot 10, and this kind of is known. And that can be picked up in a survey easily, right? Those positions can be picked up. But as I said, the major thing is how do we farm it to make it beneficial to the village as a whole? Because as I said, some people may own just a quarter share of, right? And it's not economic for them to go into the back there. So if we said everybody gonna farm their own, it's only those who can afford to go in, and those who can, not only who can go, but those to whom it will make economic sense to go in. So you still have large areas untouched, and your bush will take them over.
My brother, if I may, two
Yeah.
issues. What would have to happen? The services of a surveyor would have to be engaged,
Yes, that is true.
and the system is known as re-identification of the boundaries in keeping with the parcel numbers or lot numbers,
Yeah.
and that would solve the problem, so you know who owns what where. The issue, the issue of working those lands as a co-op, we would have remember that the residential area is owned as private property, and the cultivation lots are attached to each residential lot or parcel.
Mhm.
Hence, I own, for example, Buxton, I own 3 pieces of land because of the different soil types. They don't give one person all the good soil and other people take the bad soil. Everybody shares it. That is what our foreparents did.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's why I
It
said
means
you may
it
own
means
two
it
quarters
means
and a half or
it
whatever.
means therefore for my any portion of my backland to be administered as a co-op, I would have to cede my right to the cooperative society because I would not be cultivating directly, or the details of such arrangement would have to be worked out precisely for that change to happen, because when I am paying my residential rates and taxes at the village office, I'm also paying for the land that I own at the back,
Yeah,
but I am not personally cultivating it
yeah.
because it's now cultivated as a co-op society. So that change would have to be we'd have to sit down and work out the details and the ramifications in making that a reality.
Well, that is something which I think the villagers can work out along with the NDC, how those can be effective, that can be effective. Because at the end of the day, the co-op society is either going to pay you, well, not is either, they will pay you, the owner of the land, dividends based on their productivity. And that dividend, I think, should be adequate to cover your rates and taxes, plus to give you something in your pocket instead of leaving the land there
I,
idle.
well, I was getting to that when I mentioned earlier about the coconuts and the breadfruit.
Yeah.
And then it would be all of, if it's done well in a short space of time together, you have so much available that consumption you'll be able to consume all of it. And there is where we would I was thinking out loud about acquiring, the industrial site that they had there, the seawall.
Mhm.
If we could identify something and have a factory or something there, we could start doing coconut oil, coconut this, coconut that, breadfruit chips,
Well,
breadfruit, right.
in
With,
some
with, and,
of
uh,
the,
and that could be done as well from the back down from the co-op society. So
in
it
the
depends.
agro-industrialization can be done in the backlands also.
Right. Well, it depends, the
Yeah, yeah.
proximity and transportation
Mhm.
and all that have to be worked out. It's just thinking out loud. But I think you get the idea what I was trying to do. That's my contribution in terms of the land issue and how to resolve it. One other point is that Paul Slow had mentioned the last time I was on that we should not allow what happened to go just die down, and some legal action should be
Yes,
taken.
when I'm supposed to be meeting with lawyer UC Anderson in the very near future to continue that action.
Right. They can't just walk in and do things like that, and they say okay, they give back the money and say, and no, 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 no. There's a penalty supposed to be imposed, so make it a precedent so it doesn't happen again. Okay.
True. Brother Emma, you talked about the mechanisms involved in getting the co-op society. Has it been involved as you were with community development? How what sort of advice would you give us that we can start working with?
The first advice is that you would have to organize the residents in groups in relation to what they want to do. If it's one set of people, one group would be producing crops, another set would be like processing, and another set would be kind of doing the marketing. As was mentioned, you have coconut, breadfruit. You can have a group producing coconuts or certain crops, another producing breadfruit or whatever it is. And they can be giving it to another group who would do the processing. Your processing would not be possible for your process. Okay, I shouldn't say should not. Your processing area has to be a very clean area to prevent contamination.
Yes,
So wherever you're going to establish your processing plant, you'd have to ensure that certain health
sanitation.
conditions are in place. For example, your mangoes, you can process your mangoes, you can do fruits, you can do juice, and then another set can either do the packaging or whatever it is in the distribution to the schools or whatever it is, whatever, get hold with the Ministry of Education and you can supply fruit juices, natural fruit juices, whatever it is. You can also do beekeeping because you want increased pollination, and you'll be able to sell pure honey instead of sugar coated honey. So there are multiplicity of issues. You have to have the people organized. You have them registered. As a group, you can do a business registration, which is $5,000. You start the production.
No, but the cooperative, once established, is a business unit. So we don't need to have that business
For you
registration again.
for you to go co-op, it's a near impossibility, because I was part of a group that was registered around 2018, 2019. We became dormant, and since last year we were trying to resuscitate. The secretary visited the co-op office, and our file cannot be found. Unfortunately or fortunately, around before 2015, we were able to go to visit the co-op office and were given the file of the Buxton Friendship, Burial and Benevolence Society that was registered in 1920. Got that file, resuscitated that society, and was able to get money to re-erect Tipperary Hall. The name of the building is Tipperary Hall. The name of the society is the Buxton Friendship, Burial and Benevolence Society. So if a society that was registered in 1920, you can find the file. The one registered before 2015, you can't find the file. Something is wrong, grossly. For you to be registered, you have to do due diligence of the members of the co-op, of the executive members.
The exec members.
You have to get your information, your picture and what's not, and you have to send it to immigration for them to verify whether you're clean, and that takes months before they can get back to co-op department. They can call you and have that done.
What I can say is that in BV, we have had a co-op registered just about the same time which you mentioned, and the documentation is with the villager, the president and the secretary of that co-op. Between the two of them, they should have the documents. It's just a matter of having, but it was for the same backlands. It's just a matter of having that revised, I think. I don't know how difficult that a process it would be, but we can start there.
Well, if I may, remember there were 4 projects, MOCA.
Yeah, the same 4 projects.
Right. It's the same time that we got registered. We have our certificate of registration, all our books, everything. But to resuscitate the society, the co-op office has to visit us.
Yeah.
And so that we have meetings, etc. They don't have a file, so the co-op officer can't come because they don't know me. We show them the certificate. They say, no, we didn't get your file. You're not recognized. So we die a natural death. We tried to do that because we wanted to start something else, and we just left out in the cold. So there are lots of I think it was in Shakespeare. Somebody said, "Mischief thou art afoot, take what course thou wilt." Remember that from school?
Sometimes it's willful because they're just waiting for time to pass and just to dissolve the whole thing.
Well, we will, because the thing is, even if we start the process, it's not something which we can finish in a week, a month, a year, because the whole process of getting that backland rehabilitated and people engage in it is something which I envisage will take a few months, maybe a year, to really get off the ground. So we can engage the co-op office again and start that process while we are doing the getting registration documents. We go ahead in the other areas, right? Instead of us then to do the fasting, register a business, and no, because with a business, then you're saying who are the owners of the business, who are the partners in the business, or whatever, and to encourage other villagers to participate, then you will get issues. Right? That's my take.
It's the easiest way, shortest possible time to have a group recognized legally. You call it a business registration. The only difference is the name. You function the same way. 90% of, likewise in the co-op society, you do your annual report, you audit it, and the same thing, you make a profit, you pay GRA, whatever it is. The only difference is you call one a co-op society, you call one a business, you do business registration.
Unless you do a company.
Well, if you want to do,
if you want to do,
then you have to engage the services of a lawyer to have your board of governors, etc., whatever it is to administer the company. And then you will, to get a lawyer is a different story, and legal jargons and everything to come in there. And you gotta find a couple $1,000 well.
It's a more
to pay the
elaborate process yet. But at least it will spell out how ownership is and the solution if that should happen, how things will be resolved. As against a private business where things are not as clear cut. That's my take. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
All you have to do, you establish your articles of association on which you're going to operate. You put that in your rules and regulations.
Okay.
You don't only do the registration, but you have your rules and regulations, how you would be governed, what articles of
I now follow what you're saying.
etc. So you have because the same thing you do with a co-op society, you prepare your rules and regulations, but to legitimize the organization, you do area business registration, you register as a co-op society.
Under the name. Okay.
Under the name, it's only the name, but it's the same function.
Okay. I see. As them boys say, strict to the government, wise to the population. That's an example.
Yeah, because when I was at CDC, that's how we registered lots of the groups that got grants from Linden to 53.
Okay. I see. Okay, gentlemen, it's getting to program time. Any last announcement, advice?
What I would say, it's a good brainchild coming from you. The next important thing is to have it filtered down to us, and we the people have to come on board and have it implemented. Because I can tell you number 4, number 5, lots of the fruits, the mangoes and what they're producing are wasted. They don't have transportation to bring it to town. Lots of the produce in Linden on the Suzac Linden highways waste. They don't have transportation to bring it to the market. That is why Bonham had established the marketing centers, Charity, Highway, Kurukuru, and other places. But these don't no longer exist. So there
Well,
is need for you to do processing of your agricultural produce, whatever they be.
you see, that is the reason why I feel communities need to come together, people in the communities, and each one teach each one, because I'm pretty sure in most communities you find people who are knowledgeable in aspects of food preservation or processing, as you may call it, right? So, and we, even if in our community we cannot process mangoes, but we can probably find a mango processor in Golden Grove. So we can exchange. Our villages need to have that interrelationship, right? And I do hope that we can start such movements among ourselves. Right. Brother Edgar?
I'm just like to commend on
You're not
what
hearing you.
you're not hearing me?
Yes, hearing you now.
Okay. I'm saying it was very informative, the discussion. And to add to what Mr. Hamer mentioned about the proximity, you have to have location key. Transport. You eat up a lot of time in transportation costs and stuff. That's why I was mentioning the industrial site there for things that we're going to do up front, and if we could have something. And we have the little advantage. I don't know how if the Monrepo Agricultural Center is still in force. We could have some expertise from that area, because it concerns the land being arable. You plant this here, you don't plant this the next time it's crop, like corn and that sort of thing. So we can have a good structure in place, so that when we plant, we reap. We wouldn't say, well, okay, and then the drainage.
Well, there is the agriculture extension unit right at Moripo, so we can have, I think, their services,
Soil test.
soil testing,
Soil
and
Right.
test.
all that at Moripo Gate. They
Right.
have personnel who are involved in food processing, and so there's the technology and the information is right next door. So we
Right.
should take advantage of whatever it is.
That's the point I was trying to make. Yes.
But apart from the soil test, it depends on how you do your land clearing. You don't do bulldozing to remove the topsoil, put it in the barranca. That's why the highway failed. So when you plant in the remaining soil, it has no nutrients in it.
Well, that
So when
is
we
where
come to that,
our
we'll
agronomists
deal with that.
and the soil technologists will be, which we have right next door at Moripo. We will capitalize on them.
Sure.
Okay, my brothers, thank you very much. And with that,
Welcome.
I will say goodbye and hope that we'll meet up. That is the listening villagers and others. I hope that next time I'll be able to run it live on Facebook. And so until then, goodbye.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you.
It's been a long time, it's been a long time, it's not a before time. It's been a long time, it's been a long time, it's not a before time. It's been a long time, it's been a long time, it's not a before time. Long time got them lang loji, now you got them bongolo. Long time got them lang loji, now you got them bongolo. It's been a long time, it's been a long time, it's not a before time. It's been a long time, it's been a long time, it's not a before time. Long time got them dirty dam, now you got them concrete road. Long time got them dirty dam, now you got time, a long time.